The biggest opportunities for growth in the next 25 years are going to be in emerging markets. In fact, every report that I read, whether it is by the World Bank, whether it is by Goldman Sachs, indicates India and China amongst the emerging markets will go very, very rapidly in the next 25 years. If you're a multinational company, your strategy has to be how do you participate in that growth? Here is the catch. The catch is you cannot take business models you created for the American customer and simply send them to China or India and then adapt them locally. The reason that will not do is emerging markets and the customers in emerging markets are fundamentally different than the customers in developed markets. If they are fundamentally different, they require fundamental business model innovation. Why is this true? Emerging markets are a paradox. They are a paradox because they are mega markets with micro customers. Take, for instance, the per capita income in India. It's $800. Contrast that with the per capita income in the US of $50,000. There is no business model you created for the US customer where the mass market per capita income is $50,000. You can simply take and adapt it in India where the mass market per capita income is $800. This is the fundamental mistake most American multinationals make. Again, I want you to take a minute and think about how the multinational organization in the US originated. Think, for instance, the year 1900. At that time in the US, the GDP per capita was very low. So most American companies created simple products. For instance, there is a gentleman by name Henry Ford who said at the turn of the 20th century, why can't I create a car for $600? Then I will open up a huge automobile revolution in this country. And Model T was born. It was a simple car. There's only one color, no options, nothing. At that time, the GDP per capita income in the US was low. And that's how it opened up so many industries. Over time, in the last 100 years, what has happened is the per capita income in the US has gradually gone up. And today, it's about $50,000 per capita. As the GDP per capita gone up, all the companies started, who were with simple products originally, started to make the product more complex, performance-rich, feature-rich, premium-priced, huge margins, etc. So today, American companies are making products which are premium-priced, very complex, very sophisticated, with lots of features and performance. Now, let's shift the scene to emerging markets. Emerging markets today are exactly what the developed markets were in the year 1900. They have low per capita income, but there is a huge population base. The mistake American companies make is those poor people in India and China will wait for another 100 years before they can afford your sophisticated products. Poor people are not going to wait there for another 100 years to become rich so that they can buy your $50,000 car. If you don't innovate in emerging markets, somebody else will. And as you know, in the automobile industry, today Tata Motors has launched a $2,000 car, Tata Nano. The reason why the big three automobile manufacturers who have entered India 15 years ago have miserably failed is they tried to bring their American models into India and try to adapt them in India. Therefore, they have become a niche player in the top 1% of the population who are rich enough to afford the American products. But the real opportunity in emerging market is the remaining 99%. And the remaining 99%, you cannot satisfy them by simply bringing your performance-rich, feature-rich products and try to lower costs there. In fact, the Tata Nano, the $2,000 car, just to show you the power of their innovation, $2,000, the DVD player in a BMW costs more than $2,000. $2,000 is nothing more than cost of 10 iPods. That is the whole automobile. That is the kind of phenomenal innovation it takes to capture the opportunity in India. Take, for instance, General Electric. Their title, their company's logo implies they are in the electricity field. And they are a major players in the energy field, which is so critical for the US and US success in rebuilding America in the next 50 years. Now, let's pause for a moment and think about how did General Electric prosper in the energy industry in the US. You see, in the energy industry, there are two parts. There is generation of electricity, and then there is distribution of electricity. And in the US, we generate electricity in massive power plants. These are huge power plants. They are the size of a football field. The reason we put up these huge power plants is scale is critical in this industry to lower costs. If you have a big power plant, the cost of generating electricity is the lowest. But if you only have few big power plants, then you better have a sophisticated national grid, which is what we have in the US. We have a very, very state-of-the-art transmission and distribution lines, which can drag that electricity for thousands of miles. This is the industry which General Electric created. This is the industry GE has participated in the last 100 years by selling large turbine engines to these massive utilities. Now let us shift the scene to India. In India, 60% of India are in the villages. In the villages, transmission and distribution lines are either inadequate or more often than not, they are absent. Now, if you are GE, you have two choices. Choice number one, you tell the Indian government to spend trillions of dollars and lay those transmission lines. Then you will go and do business in India. This is like AT&T telling Indian government 20 years ago, why don't you spend trillions of dollars and lay those copper lines? Then we will come and give you reliable landline service. Or you have a second choice, and the choice is breakthrough innovation, paradigm shift. What does a paradigm shift mean? Paradigm shift means because these villages are highly fragmented, you have to generate electricity locally. You have to have small, decentralized power generation. Now, the problem with a small power generation plant is it is not cost competitive compared to these giant, big, scale-efficient power plants. Guess what? Renewables is a perfect answer for decentralized power generation. In fact, renewables require power generation be done in local plants. Think, for instance, windmills. You have to put the windmill where the wind tunnels are. You can't capture the wind and ship it all over the country to a central plant. Or if you are converting cow waste into electricity, cow dung into electricity, you have to put up the plant in the village where the cow dung is. You can't take the cow waste and ship it to a central plant. It doesn't make sense. So renewables actually are not only a low-cost raw material source, but it lends itself to decentralized power plant. Then we have to innovate a nano grid, a local grid. And technologies exist today to come up with a small transmission distribution line which can distribute that electricity locally. Think about putting a power plant for every village in India, 600,000 power plants, and then distribute that power locally. This is a paradigm shifting solution. Guess what? That is exactly the solution this country will need in the next 50 years. When we rebuild our energy infrastructure in this country, we are not going to rebuild in the same way it exists today.